I am here for the secret sauce to talk all about pricing for embroidery. So this is evaluating value pricing for embroidery. And here's the thing. I always hear this, how much should I charge for my work? I've heard scores of less than reasonable answers to this question. Depending on who you ask, it's ranging from universal flat rates by 1,000 stitches to some admonishment to go survey your local competitors and undercut them to comparisons to retail pricing. And unfortunately, these answers are just not great at considering the unique position of your business, and so they're limited usefulness to you. To give you a better understanding how to price your work for long-term success, let's review how to measure your business needs a bit, following up with a brief tour of some pricing strategies and the pros and cons of each. Knowing both how pricing strategies are structured and why you may or may not want to use them will help you craft an approach to pricing that best fits your business. And the first thing I think we need to do is mind the minimum. You have to make sure you're bringing in what you need to stay in business. And this begins with an evaluation of your operating costs, of course, but you got to build your strategy for growth and profit off of this foundation. Everybody starts with that break-even amount that you'll need to make in a year, balancing literal cash spent on and in your business with the amount you're charging. And while that's a chief part of what you should do for this calculation, it misses a critical resource. Frequently, especially with sole proprietors and core staffers, you're not really getting the time investment accounted for. For this reason, I'm an advocate of starting what I call the minimum to maintain. And this number includes not only the money spent, but the cost of maintaining critical labor without which your business really couldn't run in its current form. So even if you're a sole proprietor, that you're a solopreneur doing this by yourself and execute all your work yourself, you have to have this as part of your initial calculation of costs. So it has to reasonably pay for your labor in an amount that enables you to continue to put in that crucial work, or that allows you to replace yourself with staff down the road. You'll start certainly by accounting for fixed costs that don't change, like facility leases and equipment and so forth. Variable costs like supplies, utilities, temporary labor, and the like can be added. But after that, you absolutely need to add the cost of your labor or the labor of your necessary core staff measured by the month. This results in the rough amount you must bill in a given month, not only to cover your spending, but to avoid the staff and or the time needed to do your work. Dividing this minimum to maintain by your available production capacity allows you to calculate what you must charge for a given job just to stay in operation. And I'm giving you some rough numbers, but trust me, numbers and calculators won't do all of this justice. But let's just say for an hourly accounting, we're assuming the number of working days is around 251 days. Trust me, there's some calculation on holidays and stuff to go into this. You roughly could expect 6 hours of an 8-hour day to be dedicated production. And so, like I said, you might get more, you might get less, but that's what we're going to use for these numbers. You'll have 1,506 hours in which to cover your minimum. Divide that minimum to maintain by 1,506, and that's what you must bill per hour of labor to carry on. To quote jobs based on this hourly pricing, you must estimate the time a given job is going to take. Timing common tasks and productions will help establish a reasonable idea of how long it takes to produce an average garment, provided you pay attention to complexity, stitch counts, and special processes that require additional processing and finishing. If you prefer to price by stitch count, be careful not to calculate based on the top speed of your machine, which you're not going to consistently maintain, nor necessarily the actual speed you run. Calculating by stitch count requires an average speed that also includes non-stitching activities like hooping and finishing. Conventional wisdom is that most shops only really manage 500 stitches per minute. At least that has been the conventional wisdom. So let's imagine that's the truth and say that only allows for 3,000 stitches per hour to be executed other than those tasks. I mean, in this case, you can price basically on those units of 1,000 stitches, but that is assuming those averages. If that's true, we can only really get 180 thousandths per head per day, meaning we're going to have 45,180 thousandths per head per year. You divide that out for your minimum to maintain number, and you'll understand how many thousands per head per shop you have, and you can see how much you can charge per thousand to arrive at our most basic needs. But as you can see, those calculations now become a little more complicated, and so that's why a lot of people end up going to hourly calculations. They give us the absolute minimum we must charge for decoration if running machines at capacity. Though most businesses won't run at capacity, these numbers do often offer some kind of ready metric for quick estimates. Knowing that minimum can at least help us to make better decisions when we're unsure of a particular job is worth taking, and it at least can reveal things like gross underpricing. If you can tell that if you weren't running it, or you're like still running at capacity, you're not making your nut for that particular minimum to maintain, then you know you're absolutely underpricing beyond a shadow of a doubt. With those minimums established, we can start looking at profit models, and most shops are going to run on certain variations based on these different models. So let's describe those models really quickly for you. Number one, garment price plus markup plus decoration starts with your decorator's price paid for the garment, mark that up, and then adds the cost of decoration calculated in the minimum to maintain. This is often done with keystone pricing, doubling that garment cost. Pros for this, it's simple to calculate. It's a pretty standard industry practice. Cons, makes too little profit on extremely cheap garments, increases prices beyond customer comfort on expensive garments sometimes, particularly keystone pricing. And so that's why some people decide not to go there. But truly a standard. Next, garment price plus some profit adjusted decoration starts with the decorator's price paid for the garment, adds the decoration costs adjusted for the desired profit. Decorator decides on a yearly profit target, adds it to the minimum to maintain, divides it by the available work units for the year to get that adjusted decoration price. Pros for that, you're consistent independent of the garment, you're making estimated profits simpler, and you're based entirely on labor. Cons, you really require an accurate understanding of the time investment for task or process, and it requires you to predetermine the profit you want to make for a fulfilled year of production ahead of setting pricing. Next, we have garment price plus marked up decoration. This model is kind of the same as the garment plus price plus the profit adjusted decoration model, but instead of a profit goal, calculates the decoration cost simply marked up by a percentage. Pros, you don't have to do an excess of forethought and planning. Cons, super hard to forecast. You don't know where you're going to end up with it. Like I said, these are the ones that we often see used, but then you'll see lots of people who decide, I don't want to do this and we want to go with something a little easier, and they'll often go to some sort of flat rate. Flat rates can work, but I'll say they do have some weaknesses too. So let's talk about those pros and cons. There's combined flat rates where you combine the garment and the decoration in one price. It usually really tightly specifies allowable decorations and garment parameters because we have to ensure profitability. I mean, we just can't allow too many things beyond what we're willing to do. There's also the per location flat rate where we start with the garment cost and add a flat fee for each decorated location, especially embroidery, left chest or sleeve or yoke or back or front. The garment may or may not be marked up in this case, but we do have those flat rates based specifically on those decoration locations and how many are there. Or we can see people who decide to do inclusive flat rates, and those are kind of rarely used, but they include the garment and any decoration in one stated rate. And those are probably the easiest to do, but really have the widest variation of profit margin. Flat rates assume a mixture of simple and complicated jobs that one needn't worry about individually on your labor and material outlay. But if you eschew the difficulties of calculated quoting, you don't have to do any of that pre-forecasting and everything else. You're kind of undefended from having a sudden run of really complicated, time-consuming jobs damaging your margins if they all come at once. Beyond that, customers with simple work are kind of essentially subsidizing customers with more complicated work unless you price to the more complicated work, just meaning that the simple work might be pretty highly overcharged. The pros on flat rates, they're super easy to explain. Quoting is done away with. You don't have to calculate. Cons, less equitable pricing for simple work. You risk too many unprofitable jobs sinking your margins all at one time, and the restrictions on things that are tightly restricted in order to maintain profitability can cause some confusion or some upset to customers who don't get why things are restricted so tightly. And the other thing I want to kind of cover with this is that we can also talk about volume discounts. People often ask me when they're talking about pricing, like, hey, can we do volume discounts? What is that about? Should we do volume discounts? Should we scale that up? Though you can grant volume discounts, I don't always like them just to see them as a reward for larger orders, but because you really do get legitimate scale that helps you make things less costly to run at higher volumes. You reduce time wasted in loading files, reviewing instructions, rethreading machines, and reducing errors made during all of these transitions. And certain levels of efficiency are only achieved when production is super dedicated to one job for an extended period without alterations in the run. You can offer volume discounts without necessarily undercutting your profitability, but you have to understand that efficiency, and it means you really do have to know what it takes to get a job done. Time studies are pretty crucial here. So let's kind of talk about that also with packing it up, right? The pricing may include variables from digitizing design costs and rush fees, especially processes, but the central truth of pricing is clear. While we don't want to overcharge in comparison to our competition, we have to account for resources required to run our specific business. So we have to kind of pack this all together and think about everything that goes in to make our pricing make sense. But the thing is, that means that your shop may be different from other shops and very likely is quite different. And especially if your equipment and your throughput is different. The way a single head business in a small home office and a 60 head shop in a commercial space charge for their work must be different, even if we only examine the difference in costs incurred by the potential volume each can produce. The thing is, we can really value that difference. The truth of the matter is, your shop and other shops are not equally suited to take different kinds of jobs. It's different what is best suited for you and what you are best suited to do for others. The 60 head shop might not be best suited to individually monogram 10 gifts with a different cipher for each one and different colors on each one, while the single head shop shouldn't maybe take on a 1,000-piece corporate order. In each case, those jobs don't cleave to the best value of the shop in question. And it stands to reason that while the best pricing structure can be really located in that space where the best value each shop can provide occurs, whether that's based on your positioning, the technology available to you, or the skills of each decorator, what you can bring to the end customer also has an effect on what is the right pricing model for you and what makes sense as far as the jobs you take. What a customer is willing to pay is the true value of your work in the market. That doesn't change. But you need to convince your customer of your unique value. If you can do that, you'll be able to increase prices based on that perception. If you make their lives easier, offer simpler ways to order and receive goods, dazzle them with products or decorations unique to your shop, and make the experience of dealing with you enjoyable, the estimation of your value will rise. And that means we can up those prices we charge and have that value be recognized. In short, you have to know what you want to make. You have to provide real value in the way of quality products. And you have to have customer service and knowledge and creativity that is commensurate with that value you want to get out of your work. Leverage the experience it creates, that perceived value of working with your shop, and make that real for your customer. And you'll not only establish a price that your customers will be happy to pay, but one that's sure to allow your business to grow and thrive. And that is my secret sauce for today.